From Sean O'Connell talking about how great his move to the PFL is, to Jake Paul tweeting out a heartwarming welcome to his rival. Here's how fighters reacted to Francis Ngannou signing with the new Fighters League. First up, O'Connell seems to love Francis's move to the PFL.
I did, yeah. We had like the press conference and the after party and all that stuff, and it's like 25 pounds. And I had already fought a grown man that night, so I was kind of tired. But it's a good problem to have, lugging this thing around.
For years, the UFC has dominated the MMA scene. While there are a bunch of other organizations promoting the sport, the UFC has a sort of chokehold on the whole thing for a few decades now. Now that Ngannou has signed with the PFL, it looks like things are about to change. Francis is a big name in the community.
In PFL, I'll be fighting in the pay-per-view super fight division. It's gonna be a challenge for whoever feel ready. They know where I am.
So with him joining the PFL, he'll be bringing a bunch of fans to the promotion as well. That's probably why O'Connell was so happy about the news. More fans mean the fighters there get to entertain larger crowds, fight in better venues, and eventually get paid a ton more money. When Ngannou joined the PFL, he did so intending to expand his brand. Thanks to his fame, he'll probably boost the organization to a whole new level. I guess that's just one of the many perks of being one of the strongest and hardest hitting men in the world. Other fighters like Ben Askren also expressed how happy they were now that there was a chance for other fight promotions to claw their way to the top of the MMA food chain. Still, Francis's road to the PFL wasn't an easy one. At first, the PFL wasn't even on Ngannou's radar. The whole thing started back when the Nigerian requested a better contract from the UFC. Now, Dana being Dana, well, he wasn't too thrilled about having to shell out more money, so pretty soon, both parties were under some heavy negotiations. At first, it looked like things could be salvaged. However, everyone realized pretty early on that all these meetings weren't actually leading anywhere. So a few months into all of this, White decided to call it quits and released Ngannou from his contract. At this point, Francis was a free agent, and he was desperate to find a deal. Not long after that, rumors started to spread about how he was going to be joining the PFL. Nothing was confirmed yet, so people didn't know what to expect. At the same time, Ngannou dropped a huge bomb on the combat sports community by announcing that he'd be facing off against Tyson Fury soon. So now we had two major announcements to deal with. Fast forward to today, and Francis ended up signing a deal with the PFL, confirming that he'd be making his MMA debut with the organization in 2024. The delay is probably because he'll be making his boxing debut sometime this year. This makes you wonder, how will he end up doing in the PFL? Well, this is Francis we're talking about. He's not someone to be taken lightly. The man's an insanely skilled fighter with some massive knockout power. If anything, whoever ends up facing him, well, let's just say their jaw's about to face an early retirement. Francis has knocked people out with his jabs before, so imagine if he ends up clobbering someone with all of his might. From what I can tell, Ngannou is going to have a great time in the PFL. He might not be facing the best fighters in the world, but thanks to his move to the PFL, other fighters might end up moving there as well. This means that pretty soon, the PFL might end up on level terms with the UFC. If that ends up happening, Ngannou credibility with the MMA world will end up skyrocketing. There won't be anyone out there who'll be able to say anything about the man's skill in the ring. Sure, when he first starts fighting there'll probably be some peeps who'll call him out for facing easy competition. But if we give it enough time, we'll end up seeing millions jump ship to the PFL, which will probably prompt a new era in the sport. This leads us to wonder, how will the PFL impact Ngannou's career? There's no doubt in my mind that the PFL will be great for the Nigerian's career. If everything goes according to plan, he'll make more appearances in the ring, and that'll lead to even more hype being built up for the man. He's great at what he does, so if he does it more often, there's no telling how big he can get. I feel like White might be regretting his decision to not pay the Nigerian more money. It's not like he didn't earn it either. Throughout his time with the UFC, he was simply phenomenal. He made sure to destroy everybody who dared to step in his path. If he continues to fight with this mindset, there's really no telling what kind of havoc he'll wreak in the PFL. It's not like the PFL doesn't have good fighters in the heavyweight division. While these guys aren't exactly UFC material yet, they're certainly good enough to pose a threat to Francis and show him that winning another belt here won't be as easy. Knowing Ngannou and his work ethic, he'll probably end up working twice as hard to perform to his fullest every time. People are excited to see what he can bring to the table. If his UFC career is anything to stand by, he's about to bring a whole lot of hurt to the PFL roster. Me might even become champion sooner than expected. This begs the question, will other fighters follow in the Nigerian's footsteps? As I mentioned before, this step that Francis took showed the world that he refused to be bullied into a bad contract with Dana. He stood his ground, knew his worth, and wasn't ready to compromise on his morals. That sort of integrity is hard to come by. Once other fighters begin to see the caliber of competition coming to the PFL, it won't be long before the entire UFC roster begins to jump ship. The UFC had a great run, but if the past is anything to learn from, change is something that always ends up happening. Some of us will just have to accept that there isn't just one fight promotion giant on the block anymore. We've got Bellator, one championship, and now the PFL. With big names like Jake Paul backing the promotion, it's pretty clear that it won't be long before they're selling out stadiums. There's also a good chance that Francis will end up becoming the face of the company and lead it toward a better tomorrow, sooner than later. A lot of fighters like Terrence McKinney, Ben Rothwell, and Larissa Pacheco came out to express their support for the Nigerian. With so many people showing him love, it's clear that other fighters who might not be represented well in the UFC might end up signing a deal with the PFL. One of the biggest reactions we've managed to get came in the form of Jake Paul. Jake is the last person you'd expect to be supporting and tweeting about something like this, but like it or not, the man is a professional fighter now, and he's also a part of the same organization as Ngannou. And so it's awesome to see him supporting Francis in this step he's taken. Another thing that seemed a bit odd at first was when Paul seemed happy with the Nigerian betting against him in his upcoming bout against Nate Diaz. Paul spoke about it, saying that he was happy to see that despite being a part of the same promotion, Francis wasn't ready to sell out, and instead was managing to keep it real, giving an honest opinion about his take on the upcoming fight. Ngannou seems to have a special kind of integrity that's hard to come by these days. Paul also came out with a Twitter post congratulating Francis on finalizing and signing the deal with the PFL. He talked about how happy he was to hear about Ngannou coming over to his promotion and becoming an official part of his division. He called the Nigerian the world's best heavyweight fighter. Coming from the problem child, that's a huge compliment. That's because, if you haven't noticed, Paul tends to insult people a lot more often than he hands out compliments. It's clear that he's excited to work with the big man, and from what I can tell, Ngannou is stoked to get this opportunity as well. We can't predict how everything will end up going for Francis, though we can hope for the best. He's fought, shed blood, and managed to make it all this way. Now it's time for him to sit back and let the money roll in. So, from Jake Paul tweeting out a heartwarming welcome to Ngannou, to Sean O'Connell talking about how great Francis's move to the PFL is, those were fighters reacting to Ngannou signing a deal with the New Fighters League.